Well, I want to say a few things in wrap up. I won't take much time, but one thing that happens after these meetings is I'll send out the agenda and the abstracts to not only this group, but to some others who are involved with DAPTF and some of our neighboring amphibian folks. And what invariably comes back is an email from 2 or 3 saying, "Oh, this is a great conference, and you've got to write this up as a summary for the frog log," which I find not a very pleasant task, simply because, how in a few paragraphs do you summarize the diversity of topics here and the massive amount of data and species involved? So, but this year, sitting through these talks, I think I want to do two things. One is to do the summary thing, but to raise a question at the end of it, and it's a question I'd like to pose to this group. But before I say the question, I'd like to just sort of say what I think, main points would be in a summary, really, are that what's going on in California and Nevada is a lot of activity. There's an awful lot of projects, and they're very diverse. I just jotted down the stressors that are represented here in these various studies. I mean, there's the dam, water management, exotics, contaminants, UVB, climate change, grazing, disease, to a lesser extent, urban development, mining, road development, and fire, which is arguably anthropogenic. And then some of the topics, status of populations, recovery efforts, methods of doing things, basic biology related to management. And then, I didn't tally up the species, but quite a few species. Well, the question that I think is important, and I think we should address at some point. We don't have time to discuss it now, but I think it's something we want to bring up for the next meeting and maybe do some pulling together in the coming year, is what's falling between the cracks. I mean, what's the activities that are going on here, I think reflect the concerns, the conservation issues that we know about, recognizing that there's some we don't know about, and that there's entities out there with money that care or are forced to care about these issues. So we end up with quite a bit of activity about certain things. But there are other issues that really aren't getting attention, and I'm wondering how we can capture that. One that to me is quite glaring is the situation with Rana muscosa in Southern California. I mean, here is a species, is listed as endangered. It's in less than 6 places, a few tens of individuals. I mean, this is the California condor of North American amphibians, and there really is very little going on to take action here. I don't, I'm not in a position of pointing fingers at any entities, but compare this with the red-legged frog, where there are lots of projects going on, and it's endangered, and I mean, you could certainly argue that it's better off than the mountain yellow-legged frog. So I don't know that, we have a solution, but I do think a first step here would be if this group could kind of put together, well, what are the issues and situations or geographic areas or species that are falling through the cracks and aren't getting represented. And so we can't really discuss that here, but I think if people have ideas along this line, maybe they could send them my way so we can kind of put together a bit of a list by next year. Actually, I think this would be a good class project if there was a class out there to try to tackle in the coming year. A couple of announcements. As I mentioned, Las Vegas in 2007. January 11 and 12th, if you want to jot that down on your 2007 calendar. We have a tentative bid for the following meeting, and that's from Bishop with California Department of Fish and Game Group. They're hosting it. This is a tentative. They've got to look into what the facilities and opportunities are there, but that's a good possibility. I want to say that I get a lot of thanks for keeping this together every year, and I appreciate that, because it does get to be a lot of email intensity as the meeting approaches. But I am able to do this as part of my job, and I'm not able to get out or develop the extent of field projects that I wish I could. So this is one way that I can keep in touch with the whole amphibian conservation issue in this region. The real thanks go to, in this case, Park and the three agencies that contributed some money from BLM Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife Service, and then particularly the local Arcata folks who, I mean, you've just seen how active they've been in putting this together physically. Don Ashton and Hart Welsh and Jamie Batasso and Carrie Schlick have put a lot of time into making this happen here at this site. With that, Jamie was going to say something about a possible field activity tonight. And Jamie, are you out there someplace? Ah. And then maybe you can say something about the field trip in the morning.